ever walked into a building that has the scent of loneliness? Literally, you can taste and smell it. That was the scent of the cabin when I opened the door. Wood smoke provided a pungent aroma of warmth, but behind it was left emptiness. The air of October cut through jackets, even wool ones, and the forest was quiet. There was a dense, heavy silence that wrapped itself around me, and I found myself extravagantly aware of my breathing and the throbbing of my heart. I was the only one there in that echoing quiet. Robert was away in Zurich again for yet another doctor's conference. I've lost count. After 32 years of marriage, it seems like 32 years of important business trips. I've stood in doorways saying, "Have a good trip," but meaning another thing, an unsaid thing that closes. My throat. Do you remember our honeymoon on Lake Como? Sunlight sparkled on the water, lemon blossoms scented the air, and our laughter echoed across the lake, sounding real. It touched your eyes, creased corners, and hurt your belly. He actually laughed then. Now, just proclamations. "Cabin weekend," he'd said a month ago at breakfast, unfolding his napkin in that same precise, almost surgical way he has, like issuing a decree from on high. "Relax, reconnect," he'd droned, already looking away, already planning some future itinerary, some career horizon. As if you can schedule intimacy like a business appointment, as if you can order reconnection like an antibiotic, as if for a planned procedure, I stood in the doorway of the wood cabin, the burden of unspoken emotions weighing in my chest. I unpacked his bag, as that still seemed to be my role. Wife, unpacker. The cabin was rustic, maybe too rustic. It was dominated by rough timbers and a cave-like fireplace in the main room. The windows were like movie screens showing endlessly the lake growing darker by the minute. Lake Serenity is very serene. Pouring myself a glass of decent Cabernet, the sort that Robert demands to be on hand, I drink alone while the sun dips, behind the mountains, tinging the water in purples and grays. October in the mountains is not often seen in brochures. The beauty is nearly brutal, and the colors are mad. Trees scream in red, gold, and orange, while silent pines stand watch, indifferent to the display. Beautiful, undeniably. Postcardy. Perfect. But such beauty needs someone to witness it and share the awe. Otherwise, it's just noise. Visual noise. Another pretty picture in a world full of them. The cabin was hollow, devoid of laughter, warmth, and us. A stage set for a play never acted, costumes awaiting, lines memorized, actors vanished, with only silence and dust motes in the light. Organized his things in the closet, sweaters neatly folded, button-down shirts hung with precision, and shoes lined up like soldiers. My side was a jumbled mess, spilling out and lacking legitimacy. My existence and apparel took second place to his immaculate life. Wind rattled the cabin windows like a long, weary sigh. The cabin appeared to breathe a sigh, settling into its lonely bones for winter. Maybe it was not the cabin. Maybe it was me. Loneliness is a stealthy visitor. It does not announce its coming. It slips in when you are still and vulnerable. That night in the cabin in October, with the wood smoke and the lake resembling a slab of black obsidian, the thief was finally unmasked. What he whispered into the quiet of that cabin changed everything. That's what initiated this unraveling. Sunlight fell through the eastern windows, startling me into wakefulness abruptly, as if from the abrupt cutoff of a dream. The low sun of October sliced across the trees, creating searing stripes of light and dark on the cabin floor. Dust motes danced in the golden light like energetic spirits, swirling and sparkling. Sunlight warmed the cabin to a less barren and more comfortable space, if only briefly. Robert is a big presence, even when he's standing in the same room with you. His Opinions and voice fill up space, and you're left gasping and smaller. By himself in the quiet cabin, it was otherwise. There was a new stillness after loneliness had passed. A profound quiet settled over me, slowing my heartbeat and stilling the fear that normally hummed under my days. This quiet, which I had not known I longed for, was there unexpectedly. Made instant coffee, it was the only option. Brownish granules in hot water, coffee scented but gritty and weak tasting. Ate stale croissants from my bag, fossilized and forsaken. Munched dried flakes with an aftertaste that was not pleasant. Breakfast of champions? Hardly. It was fuel, I thought. I needed it to move, to escape the cabin's suffocating stillness before it consumed me. The lake trail, thank God for it, was right beyond the door, a beckoning promise. Leaves covered the walk, drifts of color like autumn snow, dissolving into the dark trees. The air was cold and crisp, stinging your face and filling your lungs with a sharp ache. Pine needles crushed underfoot, damp leaves releasing earthy scents, and the sharp smell of wet dirt and moss filled the air. The woods were a vivid display of reds, golds, yellows, oranges, crimson, russet, and bronze-like buckets of paint splattered across the landscape in a riot of autumn glory. Sunlight fought its way through the canopy, casting broken beams that infused everything with searing beauty. Beautiful? Oh, yes. Almost violently so. Taunting me, teasing its transient beauty against my gentle fading, revealing what I'd lost. Simply walked, one foot in front of the other, mindlessly, boots crunching on leaves, the sole sound in the woods, a steady beat against the silence. Distant bird calls mirrored my solitude. The empty trail stretched out before me like my uncertain future, curving into the distance. And then a figure appeared on the path, emerging gradually from the gloom. The man wore a park ranger outfit, green pants, frayed brown shirt, dressed in the muted colors of the forest. He walked with intent, having a definite sense of where, it in the wild. His purposeful gait suggested he was drawing strength from the earth. The nearer I drew, the more distinct his shape became. He was younger than he had at first seemed. Lines around his eyes and weathered skin suggested exposure to the elements. But underlying that, he was young. In the early 40s, I caught his subdued green eyes across the space. In the dappled shade of the forest, it was hard to tell for. Sure, we brushed against each other, our shoulders almost touching, and exchanged a nod, an unspoken understanding of respect for our solitude. Then he stopped. He paused on the trail covered with leaves, then turned to me. "Morning," he said, his voice slicing through the quiet. Rich and deep, it carried even in the woods. "Good day for it." Nothing more than weather chit-chat. Usually, it's generic and inconsequential. But here, alone in the woods with quiet on all sides, that voice, a simple human sound, mattered. It cut in abruptly, infusing warmth and life into my solitude. Real. Here. I moved with him, turning toward him, crunching the leaves under my boots. I replied, the stillness making my voice sound stiff. "It is beautiful." And that was how it started. Just talk about the woods. Trees, leaves, sunlight, shadows, light on bark, and fallen leaf patterns. He beheld them deeply, not merely glanced, a naturalist's insight, an artist's eye, a lover's appreciation. He pointed out unfamiliar trees, acknowledged discarded bird songs, and signaled good deer and fox tracks in the mud. He knew the forest like a part of his own body, as though he'd grown out of the earth. He told me his name was Daniel, park ranger, just as I had suspected. He enjoyed the quiet and solitude of the woods, saying he required quiet. He leaned in close and said the woods have a language all their own if you listen. Boots crunching. In the fallen leaves, I listened as he spoke of the woods as though they were alive. Something shifted within me, a buzzing electric tension between us, beyond nature's beauty. Something new, something unforeseen, and outside my daily routine. Something that was not part of my plan or even my dreams. Single-handedly on a solitary Adirondack trail, I suddenly knew in my bones that my weekend retreat to the cabin had just become a whole lot more complicated and intriguing. Do you remember when I wrote poetry? It's absurd now. Another time, decades ago. Maybe in college. In my early 20s, I had lofty ideas about life and love. Dreams. Intense dreams of being someone who felt and spoke profoundly and made others listen. Someone who left a mark on the world. Then life intervened. Robert dubbed it practicality in his infuriatingly logical tone to negate my fanciful notions. Coming of age, Eleanor, he'd told me, patting my hand with patronizing fondness. Time to grow up. Poetry was kept in a cardboard box in the attic, along with a collection of other unpractical mementos of my wasted youth. Watercolors, abandoned novels, and a worn leather notebook full of angst-ridden teenage scribbles. My passionate thoughts are locked away in the attic of my mind, gathering dust. With Daniel, sunlight filtered through autumn leaves, illuminating his face as he spoke of nature's tranquility. It felt like a dusty box in my mind had been opened. A crack let in light after years of gloom. It allowed a gentle breeze, hinting at potential. We ventured further into the woods. The trail narrowed, and branches stretched out like bony fingers, inviting us into the underbrush. As we walked, our shoulders brushed, creating an intimate closeness, too informal for a random meeting in the middle of nowhere. Daniel indicated things quietly, blending in with the crunching leaves and breeze. I would have overlooked the details, distracted by daydreams, blind to the beauty that surrounded me. Ferns grow out of moss-covered rocks and moss-covered tree. Trunks and fallen leaves are singular works of art. He found the world in plain view and taught me little by little, as though I was a slow student. He nudged me to look closer, listen, and notice the subtleties that I had overlooked. Spoke of the forest, the equilibrium of the environment, and hidden dramas in the silent woods. It gradually diverted from the subject of the forest to life, his life to begin with. He talked, and I listened, thirstily imbibing his words like a desert wanderer who has found an oasis. He had explained his life as a park ranger, the isolation of his schedule, and the tranquility of being responsible for trails and safeguarding nature. It was quiet work, he said with a nostalgic smile. Just what he needed. A quiet confidence that did not admit denial. He explained that he opted for this life after losing his wife. The grief is still evident in his voice. Young, barely 30, she passed away due to an incurable disease, and all that remained were hair ashes. She left too soon. Gone was a void in his life that the forest couldn't fill. No self-pity, just gone. A brutal fact. His intense stare reflected his austere existence. He craved quiet, loneliness, and nature. Then, without knowing it, I began to speak too. I was amazed at the sudden burst of words after years of silence. Not Robert's world or constant socializing, not our perfect life image. It's the quiet moments, secret places, unspoken desires, and intervals between milestones. The quiet amid the noise and ongoing activity. Robert and I were constantly busy, exhausting ourselves. But to what purpose? Living what life? We performed on automatic pilot, reciting words no longer significant to either of us, acting for a non-existent audience. Our lives intersected in a parallel fashion, like two ships in the night. Hello, but never meeting. The house was large and cold, echoing as we walked through its rooms, stuck in our habits beneath the same roof. I was a ghost in our separate lives. Like a watercolor painting left out in the sun, colors ran and blended into nothing. It felt like no one saw me anymore, obscured behind Mrs. Robert Abernathy, the stylish wife of the famous surgeon, brought back long-forgotten thoughts. Confessions flowed out, feelings released after years of holding back. He listened with purposeful green eyes, fixed and attentive. No interruption, no judgment, no empty reassurance. Simply there, absorbing as if he got it. He glimpsed something genuine and vulnerable beneath the polished exterior. The trail opened to a stunning view of Lake Serenity, wide and still, mirroring the bruised autumn sky. Daniel halted, motioned to the vista, and said, "Let's pause here a moment." It was not merely the view, it was to breathe deeply and absorb the quiet and timelessness of this place. Sitting together on a fallen log, side by side but not touching, near enough to feel his warmth. Quiet fell around us like a warm blanket. This time it was different. Not the suffocating quiet of aloneness or the solitary quiet of loneliness, but an easy, companionable quiet. A quiet of shared understanding and human presence in the natural world. Time spent watching the lake, the light shifting as the sun set lower, colors deepening and blending, the air cooler with the promise of dusk. He told of the lake, his voice soft and musical, spinning tales into the stillness. It was old, formed by glaciers, deep with mysterious depths, concealing life in its icy, dark water. Woodsmen, fishermen, and travelers who took refuge there told legends and local mythology of the lake. I came to know the lake intimately as he knew the forest. Sitting beside him on the log, watching the light fade over Lake Serenity, I felt an odd sense of certainty rise in my chest. It was as if he was starting to know me as well, from our conversation and shared silence in that serene spot. He knew me, the woman I used to be, buried under duty and responsibility. I had almost forgotten that she existed. Life is mysterious. Catching you off guard at the 11th hour, a chance meeting in the woods, a conversation with a stranger at the water's edge on an October afternoon when the light is fading. If you felt that inner tilt, that unsettling and exhilarating sense of more to you in the world, maybe you understand. Finding a piece of yourself in a quiet place with the person you least anticipate who actually sees you for the first time in years is profound. If you're wondering what happens next and where this takes you, you're not alone. What if you meet a stranger in the woods who knows the hearts of men? Maybe stay a while. The quiet stories, the ones between breath and heartbeat, can rearrange everything. They echo in you long after the noise of everyday life fades away. If you'd like to see where this silence leads me and catch this unexpected marriage, maybe subscribe? Yes, subscribe. This channel is for those who understand. Life is not always about grand gestures or headlines in the news. It is the little things, fleeting connections, shared understanding, and subtle transformations that truly matter. Real life, real feelings, and underlying emotions often go unspoken. Subscribe if you can relate. If you're drawn to the silent corners of the heart and the unexpected connections, I need you to hear the rest. It starts in silence and grows in whispers, but it will grow quieter. In the silence, it becomes complicated and perhaps more perilous. It will be forever changed. Walked cabin, woods darker, shadows long, thin, air colder, biting skin. Didn't talk much, didn't need to. Just walked. Side by side, close, but not touching. Yet. Cabin windows up ahead, glowing yellow trees. Looked warm and inviting. Like promise. Stopped at the porch steps. Stars out now? Sharp, bright black sky. Daniel turned to me. Green eyes, dim light, quiet, searching. Thanks, he said, voice whisper. For a walk. Thanks, I whispered back. For everything. Stood there, just looking at each other. The silence around us, but not empty anymore. Full of something unspoken. Something charged. Then he moved. Just a little. Hand brushed mine. Accidentally, maybe. Maybe not. Spark. Small. Quick. But there. Electric. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. I stood there, hand almost touching, the air thick with unsaid things. Unwanted things, maybe. Dangerous things. The cabin doors right there. Warm lights spilling porch. Invitation light. Invitation eyes. Invitation almost touch. Hand. And that moment, standing cold porch, woods all around, cabin light glowing like a beacon, I knew. I knew it wasn't just woods walk anymore. Wasn't just talking. This is something else. Something forbidden. And quiet woods just got a whole lot louder. Daniel, gone. Walked back dark, swallowed trees. Watched him go until just shadows. Then turned and went inside. Cabin. Felt different. Again. Warmer. Yeah, fire is still strong, but warmer inside, too, somehow. Wine hand, but barely. Tasted. Sat fire. Watched flames dance, flicker, and die down. Quiet cabin. But not lonely quiet. Not empty quiet. Quiet, full. Full of everything just happened. Woods walk, lake talk, touch porch. Daniel's face, voice, eyes, all playing. Head like movie I couldn't stop watching. Robert is coming back tomorrow. Back in Thessaly, back to our life. Back normal. But normal felt wrong now. Felt like a costume I couldn't quite fit. Still smelled wood smoke clothes. Faint, lingering smell. Like ghost woods, ghost Daniel. Remembered walking him, talking quietly. Feeling seen. That stayed. Quietly stayed. Like a secret you can't unlearn. Left the cabin the next day. Drove back to Thessaly, back to the big house, back to everything I knew. But things looked different. Felt off-kilter. Like I was seeing things. First time, maybe. Like maybe there is more to see than just surface, busyness, performance. Maybe quiet things, small moments, unexpected connections. Maybe that's real life. Woods showed me that, I think. Or Daniel. Or maybe both. Or maybe just me. Finally waking up to something I didn't even know sleeping through was a thing. And now, I have figured out what to do with being awake. And that, that's the scariest part of all. Thank you so much for spending your time here. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. And if you're interested in seeing the rest of the story unfold, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything.